Good morning, folks. Welcome back to another Espresso Tech Shorts, and today we're going to be looking at a Vietnamese coffee maker. So I'm not going to get too much into the culture because I'm not Vietnamese, but basically you have this little, you can see the filters on the bottom there, and a little rim, so it sits on top of the cup, and then typically you'll have a second layer of filter here, or a top piece. And also there's usually a lid to lock in the heat. I'm not using one of those so that we can see what's going on, but sometimes, you know, if you get in a restaurant, they'd probably put a lid on top of it. In terms of measurements, I haven't seen a whole ton of, usually it's kind of like 3 demi-spoons. So we're just going to add some coffee. Now, when the French came and colonized Vietnam, there wasn't really a huge dairy presence there, dairy industry. Once you add your coffee, just throw this on. You want to thread it down, not too tight, mind you. That's probably fine. And then add your water. Again, typically you'd have condensed milk in the bottom of this, and then once you were done, you would give it a stir and mix it up. And you get this really creamy, chocolatey texture. It's delicious. And iced or hot, it's made both ways. So when the French came to Vietnam and colonized, they, you know, a lot of milk, obviously, being drunk by the French, but in Vietnam there wasn't really a huge dairy industry. And so what they did was there's someone back home who created condensed milk, and then they sent condensed milk over. The French press was sort of invented in and around the 1800s, beginning of the 1800s, would have been popularized since then, and after living so long under French colonial rule, the Vietnamese kind of came up with their own take on kind of that style of brewing, and that's what this is. Typically called, I believe, the Phin, P-H-I-N. I'm not going to try and pronounce it sort of traditionally because that would just butcher it. And this is kind of the whole experience. It's super traditional or ritualistic. It's really quite satisfying to make. And then once you finish with the drip, you give it a little stir. Vietnamese coffee is an important part of this. We're just using a medium dark roast. But typically you'd want a really strong coffee. It's sort of famously quite potent. I think in the US, you'll see a lot of Café du Monde recommended, which is a coffee and chicory blend out of New Orleans. And I think that's because when the Vietnamese immigrants came to the US, it was really similar to the coffee that they were drinking back home. So if you can find some Café du Monde, very popularly recommended for this brew method, or just in general, but we're just using a medium dark roast. Really anything that's kind of nice and bold should be good, but of course, ideally, you'd get your hands on some Vietnamese coffee. Vietnam rather, produces, I would say, most of the world's, certainly a majority of the world's Robusta. That's kind of what they're famous for right now. And part of that was started by the French when they sort of forced coffee plantations to be made. So it's a pretty quick process, usually maybe a couple-minute brew. It's great as something you can take camping. It's pretty easy to clean up, and it's pretty indestructible. I mean, it's all stainless steel, so that's kind of nice. And we're almost done here. Yeah, just a really neat coffee maker. I love coffee makers from different cultures. Maybe one day we'll take a look at Turkish coffee. That's another one of my favorite, sort of not so common, certainly not so common here in North America, but really unique and exciting way to make coffee. Alright, so we're just about finished there. Give it a little shake, put that one aside. And there we go. Again, typically you want condensed milk in there and give it a stir and you get this really creamy texture of coffee. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.